This week, we are going to continue our learning on a firm's payout policy. Recall from the last week that we have learned that from a firm's free cash flows, after the firm pays out interest payment to the firm's debt holders, what's left is for the firm's equity holders or shareholders, right? Using this source of cash, the company will make two layers of decisions. First of all, on the first layer, the company will first decide whether to retain the cash or pay it out to its shareholders. If the company decides to pay out a certain amount of cash to its shareholders, then here comes the second layer of decision, which is the choice between the stock repurchases and cash dividend. So the second layer of decision, basically repurchases versus cash dividend, that is what represents a firm's payout policy. Okay. Last week we have reviewed how each method of payout works. Okay, so we have learned how dividend is made and how stock repurchases are done. Today, starting from today and throughout this week, we are going to investigate the relationship between the firm's payout policy and the firm's value and eventually investors' welfare. Okay, so let me share a PowerPoint slide. Okay. Okay, so we are going to once again stagger our discussion in two steps. So first of all, in our search for the relationship between the firm's payout policy and firm value, we are going to assume a perfect capital markets. And then we are going to introduce one of the biggest imperfections that characterizes our reality, which is tax. Okay, does that sound familiar? Yes, that's very similar to what we did in chapter 16 when we learned the capital structure. Not surprisingly, the payout policy theory that we are going to learn in this chapter was developed by the same guy who developed the capital structure theory that we learned in chapter 16, Modigliani and Miller. Okay, all right. So first of all, once again, let's assume a perfect capital market and let's see how a firm's payout policy affects firm value and investor preferences. Once again, be reminded that by a perfect capital market here, we are assuming the same perfect world that we had assumed in chapter 16 capital structure. So in other words, we are assuming a world without taxes, the world without cost of bankruptcy, the world without any transaction cost, the world in which where both firm and investors can lend and borrow at a risk-free rate, and it's a world with perfect competition, etc. Okay, so now in a perfect capital market, how would payout policy affect firm value? Okay, so if a corporate decides to pay cash to shareholders, it can do so through either dividend payments or share repurchases, as we have learned last week. Then how do firms choose between these two alternatives? Eventually, if there's any relationship between the payout policy and the firm's value, in other words, the choice between dividend and stock repurchases affect the firm value somehow, then the financial manager and CEO, CFO of a company has to choose the payout method that will maximize the firm's value, right? But if not, why would you care? If the payout policy does not affect firm value at all, why would you care? You better channel your energy and efforts toward more important corporate decisions. Okay, so the primary question here is whether the firm's payout policy, basically the choice between dividend and stock repurchase, will affect the firm value. But before we get into the details, please be reminded that here by the payout policy, we are just considering the choice between dividend versus stock repurchase. In other words, the second layer of decision. Here we are already given that the firm has decided the retention versus payout decision already. Okay, so it's given that the firm has already decided to pay out a certain amount of cash already, and then in this setting, we are considering whether the choice between dividend and stock repurchase will affect the firm value. Okay, so what is your prediction? If the world is perfect, what do you think the payout policy will affect the firm value? Yes, as you expected. In a nutshell, if the world is perfect, then the method of payment does not matter. In other words, the method of payment, whether it be dividends or stock repurchases, it will not affect the firm value, and therefore it's not going to affect investor preferences. Okay, let's prove this proposition using a fictitious company, General Corporation case. Okay, so just as a setup, let's assume that the company General has 20 million excess cash right now. So it has $20 million cash in hands right now, and the firm is not using any of that at all. In other words, General Corporation is all equity finance company. So this is to simplify our analysis. Okay, so we are singling out the payout policy from the firm's capital structure. Okay, let's further assume that the firm expects to generate additional free cash flows of $48 million per year every year in subsequent years, okay, in perpetuity. Okay, and let's further assume that the firm will pay out all future free cash flows as dividends. It means that the firm's future payout policy is set and known. No matter what you do, no matter what you decide to do this current year, the future payout policies are all set and known. In other words, in all future years, the company will pay out all future free cash flows as cash dividend. So this is once again to single out one current year's payout policy from the future, subsequent, and consecutive payout policy decisions. Otherwise, the analysis will become very complicated because if you consider current payout policy and future payout policy altogether, actually that is a multiple decision accumulated, right? So our analysis will be comprehended and compounded. Okay? So we are singling out this current 1 year's payout policy from the future payout policies. Okay. All right. Right now, let's assume that firm's unlevered cost of capital is 12%, and the firm is right now unlevered, so 12% of the discount rate will be applied to all of the firm's cash flows. Okay, and then we can compute the enterprise value coming from the firm's ongoing operation as following. Okay, so remember that we had assumed that the company will generate $48 million free cash flows every year in perpetuity, so we can evaluate the total present value of all future free cash flows using the perpetuity model, right? So cash flow C over discount rate R, and the fixed cash flow, constant cash flow that repeats is $48 million, and the proper discount rate here is 12% because the firm is unlevered now, using no debt, and the firm's unlevered cost of capital is even to be 12%, so 12% becomes the discount rate to evaluate the firm's free cash flows. So using the perpetuity model, we can obtain that the EV coming from the firm's future ongoing operation is $400 million. And don't forget that the firm has $20 million excess cash in hand right now. So together with the cash, the firm's total market value of equity is $420 million. Well, the firm is all equity finance, so the enterprise value equals market value of its equity. Okay? And the firm's market value of equity, or EV, is right now $420 million. Let's further assume that the firm currently has 10 million shares outstanding. So what does that mean? It means that right now, current per share stock price is $42 per share. Okay? The total market value is 420, and the firm has 10 million shares outstanding. So the per share stock price right now is $42 per share. So this is the setup. And now the question at hand is whether to pay out the current $20 million excess cash through dividend or repurchase. Okay, so General's board is meeting to decide how to pay out its $20 million excess cash to shareholders. One possibility is to pay it out through a cash dividend. Second possibility is to use that $20 million excess cash to do stock repurchases. Okay. Well, once again, recall that all future free cash flows will be paid out as dividends in both cases. So no matter what you decide to do today or this year, future payout policies are set and known. You are going to pay all the future free cash flows as dividends. Okay, so once again, we are singling out just this year's 1 year's payout policy on the firm value. Okay? All right, so the question here is whether the choice between dividend and stock repurchase will affect General's share price. More importantly, will this affect investors' preference differently? Okay? Will there be any particular policy that shareholders prefer over the other? If yes, then the company has to go for that way. But if not, you don't need to care. Okay? So let's investigate what's the answer. All right, so let's evaluate the alternative policy one, where the company will use the excess cash $20 million to pay out cash dividend. In which case, the company will use $20 million excess cash to pay out cash dividend, and the dividend is equally and evenly distributed out to all shares outstanding, over 10 million shares. Okay, so that means $2 dividend per share. So each shareholder will receive $2 cash dividend in this case immediately. Right? Well, and then that's happening at time 0 in current year, and then a dividend of $4.8 per share each year thereafter will be repeating. Because the firm expects to generate future free cash flows of $48 million per year, and this $48 million free cash flows will be once again evenly distributed over 10 million shares outstanding in each of the future years. Okay, so this future payout policy has nothing to do with the current payout decision. Okay, now to determine the impact of decision, let's compute General's share price just before and after the stock goes ex-dividend. So let's suppose the board declared the dividend and sets the record date as December 14th. And remember from what we learned last week, the ex-dividend date is 2 business days before the record date. So in this case, the ex-dividend date will be December 12th, assuming that there's no holidays or weekends between December 14th and December 12th. Okay. All right, and let's compute the firm's share price right before and after the ex-dividend date. Once again, record that starting from the ex-dividend date, the share starts being traded without the dividend. Okay, so if you purchase stock on or after the ex-dividend date, you are not going to receive this $2 per share dividend. Okay, and now let's compute the firm's stock price just before and after the ex-dividend date. Okay, so first of all, just 1 day before ex-date dividend happens, in other words, on December 11th, how would the General stock price look like? So first of all, let's compute the timeline. So first of all, if you purchase the stock just 1 day before the ex-dividend date, you still receive the declared dividend, right? So you are going to receive $2 cash dividend at the current time, and then each of the future years in perpetuity and repeatedly, you are going to receive $4.8 cash dividend. Okay, so this future dividend part makes a perpetuity, right? And let's compute the value of this stock on December 11th. Okay. So recall that timeline. So the stock price on 1 day before the ex-dividend date, which we call cum dividend price, will be current dividend $2 plus present value of all future dividends, which is the perpetuity of $4.8, right? So together, the stock price on December 11th, which is cum dividend price, that will be $42 per share. Okay, by the way, the cum means with. Okay, so the stock price with the dividend, that will be $42, which is same as before in the initial setting. And now let's compute the ex-dividend stock price. And now once again, let's draw firm's timeline, assuming that you are a one-share stockholder. And starting from the ex-dividend date, the stock starts being traded without the dividend. So you're not going to receive the current $2 cash dividend. You're not going to receive it, okay? But still, you will receive $4.8 cash dividend in each of the future years in perpetuity, okay? So keep that timeline in mind, and let's compute the ex-dividend stock price. Okay. So ex-dividend stock price, in other words, the stock price without the dividend, that becomes only $40, right? So you no longer receive the $2 cash dividend in the current time, but rather you will be receiving only a future cash dividend of $4.8 in perpetuity. So the stock price on or after the ex-dividend date will be $40. So what did you see? On the ex-dividend date, the stock price will drop from $42 down to $40, okay? Well, this amount of price drop, the gap between 42 and 40, that's exactly $2 per share, and that's exactly the same as the amount of DPS, dividend per share amount, okay? So that's the outcome in the alternative policy one, when the company uses cash to pay out its cash dividend. And let's keep considering the dividend payouts implications on the firm's balance sheet. Okay, how do it affect the firm's balance sheet? Okay, so on December 11th, right before the cash dividends are paid, or the stock goes ex-dividend, the company still has $20 million excess cash, and the firm has $400 million value from its future ongoing operation, total $420 million value. And the firm right now has 10 million shares outstanding, and therefore the per share stock price will be $42 per share. Starting from ex-dividend date, the stock start being traded without the dividend, and the cash will be paid out. The $20 million cash will be leaving the company's pocket, right? So the cash balance will dwindle down to zero, as we learned from last week, right? The cash balance will go down to zero, but the firm's future operation is not affected. So the firm still has $400 million value from its future operation, total value of $400. And that $400 million will be divided over 10 million shares outstanding. Therefore, per share stock price starting from the ex-dividend date will be $40 per share. So summarizing, the first outcome in a perfect capital market. In a perfect capital market, if a firm pays dividend, cash dividend, then the stock price drops drops by the amount of the dividend per share when the stock begins to trade its dividend. Okay, so recall, keep this outcome in mind. We are not making any judgment on this. We are not making a judgment whether this is good or bad, but this is just a fact. Okay, just keep that fact in mind, and then let's move on to the second alternative policy. In the second alternative policy, the firm is going to use $20 million excess cash to buy back its own shares instead of paying it out to shareholders as cash dividend. Okay, so the company will take that $20 million excess cash and go on the market and use up that cash to buy back its own shares. How many shares can the firm buy back? Right now, currently, before any payout is made, the pre-balance stock price was $42 per share, as we have seen in the setup earlier, right? And the company will use $20 million total cash, resulting into 0.476 million shares can be bought back. Okay, so 0.476 million shares will be repurchased and distinguished. Therefore, only 9.524 million shares will be left outstanding. 10 minus 0.476, right? So after the repurchases, only 9.524 million shares will be left outstanding. Well, here, let's assume that the stock repurchases will be done immediately as well. But in reality, as we learned last time, stock repurchases take usually a longer time, normally a year or more. But in this perfect world, let's assume that the stock repurchase transactions will be made immediately. Okay. So immediately, the company will use up $20 million cash, and 9.524 million shares will be left outstanding after the transaction. Okay. And regardless what the firm does, once again, recall that the company will pay all the future free cash flows of $48 million as dividends. Okay. So once again, this has nothing to do with the current payout decision. And now let's compute the firm's stock price in the second scenario. Okay. So now, once again, let's draw a timeline for a one-share stockholder. Well, unlike the cash dividend case, in the stock repurchase case, shareholders do not receive anything at time zero. Okay, so when the firm does stock buyback, the investors don't receive any cash amount right now, but rather the effect of stock repurchases will be recognized over time in the form of higher future dividend. So in this case, the per share future dividend will be $5.02 because actually $5.04 because why? The company will keep generating the same $48 million free cash flows. But now, after the repurchase transactions, the firm has only 9.524 million shares outstanding instead of 10 million shares outstanding before. Okay, so the same amount of free cash flows will be distributed over a smaller number of shares now, so that each shareholder will receive a larger slice of the pie. Okay, so that's the trick. Okay, now let's compute the stock price. So that the timeline for the shareholders in this stock repurchase scenario will be $5.04 in perpetuity. Okay, then the stock price will be $42. Okay, so 5.04 divided by 12% discount rate, which is exactly $42 per share. Okay. And let's continue to investigate its stock repurchases implication on balance sheet. Once again, right before repurchase transactions are done, assuming that that's December 11th, the company still has $20 million excess cash in hand and $400 million future operation value, the total $420 million asset value, and the firm has 10 million shares outstanding. Therefore, the per share stock price was $42 per share. After the stock repurchase is done, once again, assuming that the repurchase transactions will be made immediately and the company will use up entire $20 million on one day immediately because it's a perfect world, okay? Then the $20 million cash will leave the firm's pocket. The cash balance will dwindle down to zero. The firm still has $400 million value from its future operation, resulting into total market value of the firm of $400 million. And now, well, the firm value hasn't changed. The firm value changes same as in the dividend scenario. What's changing here is the number of shares outstanding. Now, the company has only 9.524 million shares outstanding instead of 10 million shares outstanding before. Okay, so this is important. One of the outcomes of the stock repurchase is that the number of shares outstanding will be decreasing. Okay, so now the $400 million market value of equity will be distributed over only 9.524 million shares, resulting into $42 per share value. So which is same as before transaction stock price. Okay, so this is the second outcome in a perfect capital market. In a perfect capital market, if the firm decides to do stock repurchases, those stock repurchases will have no effect on the stock price. The firm's stock price will not be affected. It's not going to be changing. Okay, and that stock price is same as the common dividend price if a dividend were paid instead, the $42 per share. Okay, so remember the two outcomes that we have withdrawn so far. In a perfect capital market, first, if the dividend is done, stock price will drop by the amount of DPS on the ex-dividend date. Outcome 2. In a perfect capital market, if the stock repurchases are done instead of the cash dividend, stock price is not affected. And that price is the same as the common dividend price if the dividend were paid instead. Okay, well, so looks like if the dividend is paid, stock price drops, and if the repurchase is done, stock price remains the same. So which one would you prefer? Okay, so let's investigate investor preferences. Okay, so far we haven't made any judgments yet over which policy is better. So let's evaluate an investor's preference to see whether one policy makes investor wealthier than the other. Okay, so would an investor prefer that you don't issue a dividend or repurchase a stock? So to investigate let's assume an investor who holds 2,100 shares of Junon stock. Okay, so pretend that you are an investor holding 2,100 shares of Junon stock. Then the investor's holdings after a dividend or a share repurchase will be looking like below. Okay, so if the dividend is made, well, the investor will receive $2 per share dividend for each of 2,100 shares he is holding, resulting into $4,200 cash in hand. And also, after the dividend is paid, after its dividend date, the stock price will drop down to $40 per share. Okay, so the stock price will drop down to $40 per share, and the investor is still holding 2,100 shares. So each of the 2,100 shares the investor is holding will be worth $40 now, resulting into $84,000 value in stock. Okay, combining the two, stock value and stock value and cash value, that's $88,200. Let's compare that to the repurchase scenario. If the firm does repurchase, stock price is not changing, so it will be remaining at the same $42 per share, and the investor holds 2,100 shares. Okay, the total value of the investor's holding will be $88,200 in stock. So as you can see, in either case, the value of the investor's portfolio is the same, $88,200 immediately after the transaction. So you can see whether the firm does dividend or repurchase, the value of the investor's total holding is the same. Well, now some of you may question that or argue that although the value of the portfolios in two scenarios are the same, investors may have a preference in terms of how he holds the portfolio. In other words, some investors may prefer having cash and some investors may prefer having everything in stock. Okay, so let's keep considering the investor preference. So let's assume that the company does repurchase. So if the company does repurchases, you are going to end up with this portfolio, $88,200, everything in stock. But let's assume that you want to achieve the outcome that you would have received if dividend were paid. In other words, you want some amount of cash in your portfolio. Can you revert the firm's decision and achieve the outcome that you would have received in the dividend scenario without any transaction cost? Let's see. So what if the firm repurchases shares but the investor wants cash? What can you do? You say, I don't want everything in stock, but I want some cash right now. What can you do? Yes, you can sell some of your shares to raise cash, which is a practice known as homemade dividend. Basically, if the company gives you everything in stock and you want cash, you can sell some of your shares to raise cash. That will be equivalent in amount as the cash dividend, right? So that is called homemade dividend. Okay? It's a very important terminology. Okay, so to raise the same amount of cash that you otherwise would have received in the dividend scenario, which is $4,200, how many shares do you need to sell? In the repurchase scenario, each share will be sold for $42. Therefore, to raise $4,200 in cash, you will have to sell 100 shares. And after this transaction, let's evaluate your portfolio value. So suppose the company decided to do repurchase, and you are going to combine that with a homemade dividend. Okay? The firm does repurchases, and you are going to sell 100 shares to make homemade dividend. And how does your portfolio look like now? From that original 2,100 shares, you are selling 100 shares. So you only have 2,000 shares left in your portfolio, and each of your shares will be worth $42 per share, resulting into $48,000 in stock value. And you are going to sell 100 shares for $42 each, resulting into $4,200 in cash. And let's compare that to the portfolio value that you would have received if the company did dividend instead. If the company did a dividend instead, as we have seen before, you will have $48,000 in stock and $4,200 in cash, which is exactly the same as the repurchase scenario combined with the homemade dividend. In other words, if the company decides to do repurchase, but if you like the dividend scenario outcome, then you can create a homemade dividend without any transaction cost. We recall that we are in a perfect capital market, so trading shares don't raise any cost. So without any additional cost, you can mimic the dividend scenario. Okay. Let's see whether the opposite is true as well. So suppose the firm does dividend, but you say, I don't want cash. You say, I want to have everything in stock. Then what do you do with that cash? Yes, you can use that $4,200 cash dividend to buy additional shares and keep everything in stock, right? And using that $4,200 cash dividend, how many more shares can you buy? Recall that and remember that in the dividend scenario, starting from the ex-dividend date, the stock price will drop down to $40 each. Okay, so now each share is sold for $40 each. And using the $4,200 cash, you can buy 105 additional shares. Okay, and now let's see how your portfolio will look like. So suppose the company declared a dividend, but you are going to use up that cash dividend to buy more shares immediately. Okay? And then together with the initial 2,100 shares, you are going to buy 105 more. So total, you are going to hold 2,205 shares. And each of these shares will worth $40 per share now. The total value of your portfolio will be $88,200 in stock, everything. And let's compare that to the repurchase scenario. In the repurchase scenario, each share will worth $42, and you will have 2,100 shares, resulting into $88,200 in stock value. So if the company did the dividend, but if you wanted to achieve the outcome under the repurchase scenario, you could have done without any transaction cost. You could have achieved the exactly same outcome in this case. Okay. So what is the implication here? No matter what payout method the firm chooses, investor has the ability to revert the firm's decision and create whatever scenario they prefer the most without any transaction cost. Okay. So this leads us to the more dividend known dividend policy irrelevance theory. So the M&M dividend policy irrelevant theory says that in a perfect capital markets, holding fixed investment policy of a firm, the firm's choice of dividend policy is irrelevant. In other words, it does not affect firm value, and therefore it does not affect the investor's preference. Okay? Well, maybe I should say the other way around. Investor preference is not affected. Investors don't care. Therefore, the firm value is not affected. Okay? So investors will value equally the firm paying it out through dividend and the firm paying it out through stock repurchases. Therefore, the firm value will be the same in both scenarios. Okay? All right. So what's going on behind is actually the trade-off between the current and future dividend. So under the policy one, which is the dividend scenario, let's once again consider our timeline. If the firm declares a dividend, you will receive $2 DPS at current year 0, and you will keep receiving $4.8 future dividend subsequently in perpetuity. If the firm does repurchase instead, you are foregoing current $2 DPS, so you are not receiving anything today, but rather you are saving the money for higher future DPS because the same amount of pie will be now divided by over smaller number of shares outstanding. So in the repurchase scenario, you are going to receive $5.04 DPS instead of $4.80. Okay. So if German pays a higher current dividend per share, it will pay lower future dividends per share. And if German lowers the current dividend and repurchases shares, it will have fewer shares in the future, so it will be able to pay a higher future dividend per share. Basically, it's a trade-off between current and future dividend. And in the perfect capital markets, the net effect of this trade-off is to leave the total present value of all future dividends and hence the current stock price unchanged at $42 per share. Okay? So as we have seen so far, if the world is perfect with a perfect capital markets, the firm's payout method choice is not affecting the investor preference, and therefore it's not affecting the firm's value. No matter what payout policy the firm chooses, investors will have the ability to revert the firm's choice and achieve the investor's preferred outcome. Therefore, investors basically don't care, and they will value the company equally, no matter what payout policy the firm chooses. Okay? So that was the payout policy irrelevance theory, what we achieved in the perfect capital markets. But once again, we know that the world that we are living in is not perfect. So next time, we are going to embrace one of the biggest imperfections that characterizes our world, which is tax. And we are going to see how our implications will change. Okay? So that's it for today.